Only E-Talk gets you this close. I wonder if E-Talk will use that. I doubt it, because I'm not a celebrity outside of Winnipeg, and I'm barely a celebrity in Winnipeg. They only use celebrities for those promos. I'm a former celebrity. How's about that? The host of Hard Rock Heroes, Winnipeg's only hard rock TV show from 1990 to 1993. Okay, and the host of all these webcams and all the other stuff on my YouTube channel. But I digress. And I'll be digressing again in a sec, but I'll get to that. Welcome to Webcam 3, and I'm going to try to talk as fast as I can because I'm going to have to cram a lot in because I think this could be a long one, and I'm a stubborn mule. I want to have my cake and eat it too, so I want to cram in all this stuff that I got over here. And don't worry, you're not going to be seeing my mug on the screen for the whole time, however long it shows this video as being, because I got a lot of visual aids here. We're going to talk about, we're not going to do the sleaze that brings you to your knees this time. Instead, we're going to have a whole video webcam here about the 1970s downtown Winnipeg record stores. And this has been brewing and formulating in my head for a long time, that I've got lots of stories, and I wrote something in the past that never got published, so I put it out somewhere on the web, and other people have been copying and pasting it kind of all over the place. So I decided to do someday a webcam about it, and that day has arrived. So before we get to that though, one correction from, do I use my left hand or my right hand? I don't know. One correction from webcam 2, and that is I used the wrong word when I spoke about Carly Rae Jepsen and her massive success with Call Me Maybe. I should have used the word Americans. All you Americans that are watching this can now punch up her videos on Canadian Idol. Now that you've got a reason to, i.e. now that you know who she is, you can now punch up her stuff on YouTube from Canadian Idol and be fascinated by it, because in the United States you don't get Canadian Idol. And you can see for any videos that go past the performance part of it into the judges and the host, and you'll see the host is Ben Mulrooney, who is the co-host of E-Talk, coincidentally. Me starting off this video that way had nothing to do with this correction that I'm doing here. And you'll see Ben Mulrooney and you'll go, hey, I know him. I saw him co-host with Kelly Ripa on Live with Kelly a couple of times, auditioning for Regis's job, but he never got it. As we know, it's that other guy. And I believe Ben is now doing correspondent work for ABC on Good Morning America on the weekends. I haven't seen him myself, but that was the whole gist. I said the wrong word on webcam 2. I should have said all you Americans. You see, you can punch up anything on YouTube, but you have to know about it first. You have to have a reason. So all these great Canadian-only songs by Lee Aaron, April Wine, Streetheart, they're on YouTube. Fans are putting the music, the songs, on YouTube. But if Americans have got no reason to go there, i.e. they don't know who those groups are, then there's nothing that's going to make them go there. But if I'm giving you ideas, then punch up stuff, and maybe somebody somewhere can make these old hits finally US hits, even if they're just sampled in hip-hop or rappers' songs, the way like Flo Rida takes stuff from 1962 or 1988 and female vocals and sticks them in his songs. But I digress. Let's get to the topic of the day, and that is the 1970s downtown Winnipeg record stores. Now, guys like Burton Cummings, Randy Bachman will talk about the 60s all the time, mainly in the North End, but also a little bit about Portage Avenue and what Portage Avenue was like then. I kind of don't think the record stores were there that much in the 60s, because they don't talk too much about them. You hear talk about the 80s all the time, and now there's nostalgia for the 90s. The 80s, that's what I call the Will and Grace generation, the people that are just slightly younger than me. Well, you don't hear really that much talk about the 70s, except for City FM, the ubiquitous City FM that only plays a certain amount of these particular certain songs from the 70s, even though it's a bulk of their playlist. And that 70s show, that's my generation. And in fact, when we get to these record bags, my only complaint about that 70s show is that we never saw the gang go to and from, back and forth to Eric Foreman's basement carrying record bags all the time. That would be my only complaint. because that's my generation. That's everything that happened then, and it's pretty much all bang on, except that nobody carried record bags to bring records to Eric's place to play records. But then we never saw them play a record, so I guess that's why. Although it could have been said that they're playing records during the time that we're not seeing them watching TV. We only see them for a few minutes. If they're around for 4 or 5 or 6 hours, they could play records, so they could walk in the door with record banks in their hand. Okay, where should we start? Well, how about with my favorite record store of the time, which actually was the Warehouse. Do you remember the Warehouse? Let's see. There, now you can read it. The WHERE House, the Warehouse. This store was between Carleton and Edmonton, and most of these stores are on the north side of Portage Avenue. You were the epitome of cool if you were seen as a teenager in especially the late 1970s with your jean jacket and jeans and runners on, and you were seen and caught on the north side of Portage Avenue holding one of these record store bags on Saturday afternoon to indicate that you just bought records. And this is mostly an area that was torn down to make room for Portage Place in the late 80s. Of course, the record stores became the arcades for a bit in the early 80s, and then everything was torn down to build Portage Place. Now, the Warehouse is coincidentally in the same block, I think just a couple of doors down from the old nefarious, infamous A&W that was there that apparently, I never saw them, but apparently had a lot of drug deals go down there. And I don't know if that's too much different than the A&W that is still in that spot today as part of the Portage Place food court. I think there's still a lot of drug deals going on around there, but more security, so they have to be a little more discreet. But that's the first thing I picked up on when Portage Place got built, is that A&W remains. At least the record stores are gone, but at least A&W still remains. Not the freestanding one, but the one as part of the food court in Portage Place. So A&W is still on that piece of land. Now, another good coincidence for me is for the Warehouse. Okay, I bought the Runaways, Waiting for the Night, at the Warehouse. And these records I'm going to show, this is the original copy that I bought in these stores. This isn't a replacement copy or something that I bought used to replace a copy later on down the line. This is the actual Runaways Waiting for the Night that I bought at the Warehouse. And also in that same block where the Warehouse was, where Portage Place is now, is the Globe Cinema on the 3rd floor, where I saw in recent years the movie The Runaways with Kristen Stewart and Dakota Fanning. What a coincidence! What a freaking coincidence that it just happened to be in the same block where the Warehouse was, and I bought this album. Okay, I've got another album in my hands that I bought at the Warehouse, and the story here is that one winter, you know where MTS Centre is now, and Eaton's was there, and that was the prime spot, #1 spot downtown for getting the bus, for catching the bus. It still is now, I guess, with MTS Centre, and people used to crowd in between the doors. There's the front door, and then there's the escalator in that little room in there, and people used to crowd in there to wait for the bus, especially when the weather was bad. So one day there was a huge blizzard, and everyone was just packed like sardines. I think this was a Saturday. Everyone was packed like sardines in between the doors. And you know, for clues, I should have looked up the release date of some of these records, but I never got around to it. But obviously this was in the winter time, and it was shortly after this record was released, but our bus just was not coming. My friend and I were waiting in between the doors at Eaton's. We had done a day downtown, and we were getting ready to go home, and our bus just was not coming. I could take one of 2 buses. I'll get more into this in a future story. He could only take 1 bus, so we were waiting for his bus, basically. So for whatever reason, and I've forgotten the details, that this is like 1977, I think. Yeah, it is, because when we get to this record, for whatever reason, we decided to leave Eaton's and go back out into the blizzard, and we walked a couple blocks to the Warehouse, and I bought Kiss Rock and Roll Over. So I don't know what my intent was, my original intent was on buying this album, but that's the day I bought it, that's all I remember. That's the details. I bought it at the warehouse when we were supposed to be going home, and our bus didn't come. So we started walking, and we went to the warehouse, and I bought Kiss Rock and Roll Over. Okay, I'm a huge Kiss fan, and it was with all the subsequent releases after Rock and Roll Over that I would buy the new Kiss album the first Saturday after it was released. But I wasn't into that at this point yet. All right, what should we do next? How about Music City? Music City, now I should say and point out that some of these stores we used to look forward to the newspapers at the end of the week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They'd have big, huge, full-page ads for the record sales, and we would go, oh, that April Wine record is on sale for only $3.69 at either Kelly's or Opus or Mother's. Those were the three main stores that did the big, huge, full-page sales, and we thought we were getting an advanced look at the paper in future years when we were delivering newspapers. So we would see the paper before we deliver it, before any of the houses that we delivered it to saw the paper, and we thought we were getting some advanced word, you know. I'm sure people downtown buying the paper in boxes were getting it a little bit earlier. Remember, there were no morning papers at all, so I'm not sure what time the earliest person ever saw a newspaper back in the 70s, if anybody saw it as early as 12 p.m. or 1 p.m. downtown. I have no idea. So Music City was, they were fine for sales, decent, but they weren't as big as those stores that I just mentioned. So they had a decent amount of sales. That's the best word for it, is decent. So they had some sales, and here's various different types of record bags. Oh, you know what? I chose two of the same one. Okay, so there's a Music City bag, and that's the same Music City bag. There's some bags I didn't use. I've got multiple Music City bags. But here's a different one. Music City. They change their bags around quite a bit every now and then. But my biggest story centered around Music City is, and this must have been in the summertime, because I do remember it wasn't winter, that's for sure, but it must have been Monday through Friday. There was no school because my friend and I don't think it was a Saturday. I'm pretty sure it was somewhere between Monday and Friday. So school was out. It was July or August, and we decided to go to Music City. We probably saw an ad, again, not a full-page ad, but it had a decent ad about sales, and we decided to go there and purchase the new Ted Nugent album, Cat Scratch Fever. Both of us. So we got, it was actually my friend's older brother, because one key thing I think at this time was he could drive. I was about 15 or 16 at the time, so my friend that was my age also couldn't really drive yet, or I don't know if he was learning or what, but the older brother, 2 years older than him, could drive. So he drove us downtown, and we went to Music City, and we bought Ted Nugent's Cat Scratch Fever. And the both of us bought the same record. We brought it back to his place in St. Vital. We opened it, and it was warped. Both copies were warped. So we must have had the time. We got back in the car, drove back downtown to Music City, and the sales lady and the three of us are all, she let us do it too. We were all opening all the copies of Ted Nugent's Cat Scratch Fever to try to find two copies that were not warped. And we finally found two copies, and this is mine from all those years ago. So that's one of the very few copies that were not sent back to the distributor. It's got a gatefold sleeve, so there it is. I don't know what the CD version of that looks like. And you know what? Someone, as I was formulating doing this video and all these stories I would tell, someone in a movie recently held up this album cover. What movie was it? I forgot. Was it Pitch Perfect? What movies have I seen recently that have been anything close to being about music? Pitch Perfect, and I can't remember what else. So if I'm wrong, tell me that in the comments. Tell me what movie it is that somebody holds up this album cover. Now, the way you can tell that this is the original one that was originally released is, here is the actual label, the Epic Records label. Okay, there, it's upside down, but whatever. That was the original Peach Epic Records label that Epic Records used to have before they made it a color similar to the vinyl with that I don't know what the logo looks like in the top, but you can see the point. This is what the Epic Records label used to look like in the mid 70s, not the late 70s, but the mid 70s. And that's how you can tell this is the original copy of Ted Nugent's Can't Scratch Fever that I bought in 1978 or 77, whichever. Okay, what do I want to? Those were a couple of long stories. I got more long stories, but let's do a couple of short ones first. So Music City had a couple of locations at one point. Then they whittled it down to one, but it was still on the north side of Portage. A couple of stores you had to walk down Kennedy Street for. Now, these are not just buildings, but also streets that are no longer there, no longer exist because of Portage Place. So in case anybody wonders why stuff like Edmonton, Kennedy, why they're interrupted by Portage Place and they continue on the other side with the same name, not even a different street name, it's because they used to go all the way through. In fact, Kennedy, here's some proof. You know, the Low Pub that just recently closed at the Downtowner Hotel. The Downtowner is still there, but that's that little stub end at Kennedy. That was kept, but that Kennedy used to go run all the way to Portage. So when you're visiting the North Portage downtown record stores, you turn off on Kennedy and you walk a little bit, and before Ellis, you encounter first Opus 69. And I don't have any specific stories about Opus 69, just some general stuff. They were really big for the classical audiophiles. All the aficionados for classical music used to go there. Big, spacious store, but not that much of it. Even though they had the big, huge, full-page ads for records, for sales, when you're actually in the building, only, I don't know, a third of the building, a third, close to a half or something, was devoted to the top rock hits of the day. They had a very decent classical section for those aficionados, and they also had an audiophile section. Whenever I pass by or look at the creative audio on Osborne Street, and I'm not sure I've ever been in that building before. If I have, it was just once ages ago when I was looking for something. But the whole concept beyond these audio files that are that are really into stereo equipment and everything, they all went to Opus 69. So Opus 69 was big on stereo equipment as much as they were on recorded music, both rock and classical. In the summertime, again, a lot of these memories about the summertime because school was out. So summertime, middle of the afternoon, the sun is shining and the birds are singing and the sun is so bright in the sky and it was really dark in there. So you'd walk into Opus 69 and one time I just had to stand there. It was just pitch black, dark, and I thought I was in a cave. And that's not the first time I was in there, but I just thought, oh, kind of this again, and oh, wow, even more than before. So I just had to stand there and get used to the room before I could walk around and I start to see the bunks. Oh, okay, I can start to see now, so I'll walk around. So that's Opus 69. Now you walk a few doors north of Opus 69, and what you get is a combination new record store and used record store. I almost said old record store. That's silly. Combination new record store and used record store and head shop called Autumn Stone. And this store was very famous for all the drug paraphernalia that they sold. Let's see if we get 304 Kennedy Street. Okay. Opus 69 didn't have the address on their bag. Another thing good about Autumn Stone is it makes me think of stuff I didn't and forgot to say about the warehouse, that I loved the warehouse because it had a great rec room feel to it. The warehouse had huge walls going all the way up to the ceiling covered with rock posters that I'm sure probably wouldn't look that big to me today, but back then they just looked huge and the posters just looked like these big, huge, gigantic posters like, oh, wow. And Autumn Stone had the same type of rec room atmosphere, although it was a smaller room with, those rec room type of carpeted floors that look like they come with cigarette butt marks already embedded in the carpet. It's as if, do they manufacture that carpet like that? Because I'm not really sure I saw anybody smoking in the stores. I'm not sure if it was allowed. I think it was allowed in the 70s, but it's kind of hard to smoke a cigarette and fumble through the bunks looking for records. So I probably did see people smoking in there, but never paid attention because I never smoked in a store myself. I just thought it would be too cumbersome. And in their Autumn Stone, we mainly went for their used records. They weren't so big for new records. They didn't really have sales. They had a new record section. My friends and I used to wonder why they even had new records there, because everybody just bought only the used records, and they were famous for 46 copies in their bunks of the used version of Grand Funk's Phoenix album, and I never did buy that album, so why did everybody take that album there, where there were so many deletes around Winnipeg that people bought them for like $3 at IGA and got $4 credit at Autumn Stone and made profit for $1? I actually did do that, by the way, with a John Mayall record at IGA in St. Vital, and I took it to the late great Stereo Swap Shop that is now a hair salon at the corner of Gertrude and Osborne. We used to go to that store all the time, but I digress. And yeah, I bought that record for $3 and got $4 credit at Stereo Swap Shop. But that was the main place to buy used records, and I don't have a Stereo Swap Shop never had their own bags. They had these paper bags, but it's now a hair salon whose name escapes me. But anyway, that's it for that. But why is Grand Funk's Phoenix album so bad that everybody brought? If it wasn't the whole delete thing that I just said a minute ago, why was it so bad that everybody brought it to Autumn Stone to try to get rid of it, to put it in their used record section? I don't know. So if you know, tell me in the comments underneath this video. Okay, so I think I've covered everything about Autumn Stone. Now let's go to Kelly's Stereo Mart, and this will be an interesting story with a lot of emotion to it. Kelly's Stereo Mart had a few different locations on the north side of Portage. By the time everything was being torn down to make way for Portage Place, I think Kelly's had closed maybe 2 weeks before everything, or was it 2 months or something, in their final location, the location of the old Winnipeg Public Library, and I forgot what street that was, at the corner of Vaughan. I think that's a little far too west, but a little bit farther west. And but my story is going to be about the location they had before that, and I'm not quite sure where it was, but it was either between Carleton and Edmonton, or between Edmonton and Kennedy is the next street after Edmonton. Kennedy. I should know this after about 30 years, but I can't think and talk at the same time, so I'm going to concentrate on talking, not thinking. That might be a bad thing, but whatever, we'll see. That location is where I ended up buying the Kiss solo albums, or most of them. Let me show you the bag first. I'll get the bag. Let's see. Okay, so I'm not sure if this was from that era or if it's from the later era where they were at the public library location. So there's the Kelly's Stereo Mart bag. And wow, on this particular day, now I talked about buying used records at Stereo Swap Shop on Osborne Street, buying used records at Autumn Stone. Like I've bought like 3 and 4 and 5 used records at a time. Some of them were 50 cents from the 50-cent bin. Those were the days, huh? But I had never bought 4 brand new factory sealed records at the same time ever before the Kiss solo albums came out. What was my record? Maybe 2? Had I even ever bought 2 at the same time at that point? 1978, I was 16. I'm not sure. I don't remember. So here I was trying to buy 4 records at the same time, and I didn't have quite enough money, and this could possibly be the only day throughout the 70s and the 80s that I actually visited every single record store, including Eaton's and the Bay, on Portage Avenue, north and south, anywhere, everywhere. And I went with a friend, and he got fed up with me. He got disgusted. He took off, and he went home, and I continued and soldiered on. And I was looking for a price that was just a little bit lower, and I could not find it. So I gave up, and I went to Kelly's, and I bought Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, and Ace Frehley. And again, these are the very copies that I bought at that Kelly's Stereo Mart. That is where Portage Place is now. And I'm on the bus going home, all dejected. And I could take either the St. Mary's or St. Anne's bus. And I was on the St. Mary's bus. And while I was on the bus, I thought, I've got one last chance. There was a record store in the 70s in St. Vital on St. Mary's Road called Shades of Music. And this was a real anomaly. A record store in St. Vital? This was before St. Vital Centre had opened up. St. Vital Centre didn't open up till like 79, maybe a year later. I drove my bike with my friends on monkey trails in the early 70s that are now St. Vital Centre. It was a real novelty to have a shopping mall, and a shopping mall containing record stores in St. Vital. You used to have to get on a bus and transfer buses to go to Polo Park if you wanted to go to a shopping mall. So there were no record stores in St. Vital. No, record stores are downtown. But a record store tried to do business in St. Vital called Shades of Music. So I was hoping they would have better prices, and I kind of thought they wouldn't because they're an independent store, so it's hard for them to have lower prices, lower regular prices. Even they weren't big for sales. I think they had the occasional very small sale. So I was hopeful and hoping and hopeful. And also, after I had bought those 3 records, I could gauge how much money I had a little better. I spent the day figuring out in my head with taxes, pen and paper, trying to figure out what it would be. I think I had just not quite enough. But now I had bought those first 3 records already. So on the bus, I decided to get off at Shades of Music. And it turned out, I remember having all my change spread out on the counter along with my last bills. And me and the clerk are counting out the quarters and the dimes. And I had enough to buy Peter Criss at Shades of Music on St. Mary's Road, 1054 St. Mary's Road. They were in the strip mall. The strip mall is still there. I'm not sure what is in the Shades of Music location now, but they're beside, there's an A&W there around Dunkirk, sort of across the street from Dakota Bakery and Dakota Bowling and Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota, Dunkirk, that corner there. So that's where they were, and I walked home with about, 14 cents or 23 cents or something in my pocket. I think I got a loan or an advance from my mother and my allowance after that. I'm not sure if I was working yet then, if I had a part-time job, or if that was the next summer after that. I don't remember. I think all my money may have come from my allowance because I never had a paper route. I just helped my friends with a paper route. So I'm not sure where my money was coming from at that particular time, but wow, I was finally happy, and I walked home with all 4 Kiss solo albums. So there's my story about Kelly's Stereo Mart. What do I want to do next? Let's move on to the south side of Portage Avenue. Specific story, just a minor one. South side of Portage Avenue, all there really was one store, and I'll get to that in a sec, but there was another store that was before my time, and that is Music Explosion. I remember the store. It was before it got torn down for the Hydro building. I believe it was Looney Village. Again, it was before my time. I didn't really get into music until around 1975 or so. For sure 76, but just starting to around 75. And I think in the years before that, 74 or 73, I was with a friend. I don't know why we walked in, if my friend was looking for something. And I was only in there for a second, and I just remember one of the bunks saying, "Groups." So that's 70s right there. Groups. And now they're called bands, but I mean, it's just pop rock artists or whatever when you go into a record store now, like HMV or something. There's the groups, as opposed to solo artists, groups. So I don't have a record bag for Music Explosion because I never actually bought anything there. And didn't they become a jeans store by about 74, 75 or something like that? Tell me that in the comments too. But the one store that was on the south side was Mother's Records. And this one hung around and became a shadow of itself in there's a better word, but I can't think of what it is. It became a shadow of itself in the 1980s, but it was hard to really criticize them too much because by that time, before they closed, I knew people that worked there. My friend Rocky Hunter, as well as his boss, Carol Nikon, who was the manager of Mother's Records in the 80s. A shadow, or did I just say that? A shadow of themselves. And after Mother's closed, and they became all dollar stores. I said Music Explosion had become Looney Village, and I believe Mother's Records became a Sands store, or definitely that whole block, all the dollar stores there were all run by the Sand Corporation. So it became something. But Carol Nikon, the manager there, went on to manage Sam the Record Man at Polo Park, and when that store closed, I lost touch with her. But during the heyday of Mother's Records in the 1970s, when Kiss Alive 2 came out, now where did I buy that? You know, it's not even in my head right now. If I may have bought it there or whatnot, but I'm digressing into something that I don't have rehearsed. But the display at Mother's Records for Kiss Alive 2 went, this is just like my warehouse story, went sky high into the ceiling, except this ceiling I think really was a much bigger ceiling than the warehouse ceiling was, and it was so far high that by the time it was whatever discount or dollar store that San was running that I can't think of the name of, you would still go in that store. Does anybody else realize this? And if you looked up and it was right by the counter, sort of by the door, just take about 3 or 4 or 5 steps once you get past the door and look up, and way up there you can, they cut it, I guess, with scissors as far up as they could get with a ladder, and you could still see the Kiss Alive 2 display way up at the ceiling. I guess nobody in later years could figure out how to get up there to get it down from the ceiling, or they just didn't care, or they just didn't bother. So how did the people from the 70s in 1978 that worked there get up there in the first place to put that display up? I don't know. Maybe the record company did it. If you know the story to that, put it in the comments. That would be some great discussion for that. I also special ordered the Angel. Do you know that band? There's a band from the 70s that City FM didn't play, but Angel were like the antithesis to Kiss. They wore the white outfits, and they ended off their career with a double live album that I heard bankrupted them, that was not released in Canada, and I'm not sure if to this day it's ever been released in Canada. Probably not. CD? I don't know. I think the Angel records are coming out or have come out on CD by now, but I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure about this one too. But it was live without a net. So this is the copy that I basically bought at Mother's Records, special ordered through them, and it's probably the only copy that I have ever seen physically in Canada anywhere. It's just this one in my hands. So Angel, live without a net. There's the back cover. You know, gatefold sleeve. You can see why I bankrupted them, because I'm not sure if they were even really a big band in the United States. Some headlining. I think I even read some stuff that they recorded this when they were basically an opening act. So, but they wanted to do a double live and try to do what Kiss did and see if it would catapult them into the major success that they didn't really have. They were big in rock magazines, but I think they were kind of half a headlining act and half an opening act, and it just didn't work, and it turned out bankrupting them, and they broke up. But that's the story for Mother's Records. Okay, let me check my rundown to see where I am at now. Okay, let's go into the 80s, shall we? So, as the 1970s downtown Winnipeg record stores morphed into the 1980s downtown Winnipeg arcades, Circus Circus, Long John Silver. There was a new wave of record stores. There were some record stores still downtown, but they had kind of moved over to the east. There was a couple on the north side of Portage still, and in fact, I'll get to those in sort of the last segment. A new downtown mall before Portage Place had sprung up behind Eaton's called Eaton Place. Now, where MTS Centre, this requires a little bit of explanation, where MTS Centre is now was Eaton's, of course, and in the really old days, in the back of Eaton's, because Eaton's did not take up the whole block, in the back was the Annex by Graham Avenue, north of Graham Avenue, and the Annex became part of Eaton Place. And that's why the Skywalk is there over Graham, because it's connecting one Eaton Place to the other Eaton Place. So, of course, when MTS Centre tore down Eaton's, the whole block became MTS Centre. So Eaton Place, which there's no Eatons anymore, so it had to change its name to City Place, is now only the building south of Graham. But the back of the Eaton's building north of Graham was part of Eaton Place originally, this new mall, and they had, and I gotta go way over here, they had 2 stores, but I'm only going to talk about one right now. They had A&A Records, okay, the very same A&A chain that was finally moving out west. I'm talking in hindsight, because at the time I had never heard of A&A Records. I knew about, I'm actually interrupting myself here, but I knew about the Sam the Record Man, the famed iconic location on Yonge Street in Toronto. I had not been to Toronto yet at that point. I didn't go to Toronto until early 90s, my first time. And that's where I saw the famous Sam the Record Man with the A&A location kind of right beside it. So my perspective is that kind of right next door to the, well, kind of right next door as far as the stores go. I think there was a store or a restaurant in between, but for signs, the two signs were right beside each other. The Sam sign was right beside the A&A sign. So when I first saw A&A in Toronto, I thought, oh, that was my first thought. Oh, A&A. So that, you know, from the Winnipeg stores, mainly from the bags, because the signage in the Winnipeg stores, I think, was a little different, you know, going across. But signage like this in Toronto reminded me of basically this bag. So I had seen the Winnipeg before the Toronto. I'm not sure if I was aware of the Toronto one. I was aware of Sam's, but I'm not sure about A&A. So when A&A started in Winnipeg, it was brand new to me, and I think I read in the paper it was a chain from somewhere out east and didn't think too much of it. So we had A&A and we had Mr. Sound. I'll get to Mr. Sound later. But at A&A Records, when Bryan Adams opened for Loverboy in 1982 at Winnipeg Arena, now I believe that's the first time he had performed in Winnipeg Arena. If I'm wrong, tell me that in the comments. It's not the first time he performed in Winnipeg. I believe he performed at the Norlander, Hagar's Rock Club, which is now Area Nightclub, at the Norlander on Pembina Highway there. Before I turned 18 in the very late 70s, Bryan Adams is a couple of years older than me. So I believe he performed there, but I don't know between that and the Loverboy gig what he actually did in Winnipeg. But he opened for Loverboy in 1982 at Winnipeg Arena, and he had a couple of records out, and he had an autograph signing at that A&A Records. So I was not completely in tune as to what goes on in an autograph signing. I thought I knew from watching TV. You bring a piece of paper or a notepad or something, and you get him to sign his autograph, okay? And there were a few people standing in line that had that, but they also had records for him to sign. And I thought, oh, wow, they get people, celebrities to sign albums and that. I mean, now anything and everything is signed, but whoever signs a piece of paper, whoever signs a notebook. But back then, there was some signing of pieces of paper. And I think, you know, me watching TV, that's like late 60s, early 70s stuff when I'm a little kid. So it was all pieces of paper. Then by the time 1982, this is going into the 80s, then people were signing, you know, albums, and it became just more de rigueur, or whatever that expression is, to sign merch, to sign your albums or t-shirts or whatever. I had both Bryan Adams records at home, so I wasn't going to rebuy them. Well, I guess I could rebuy them and take the ones I have at home to a used record store, but I probably didn't have enough money or something. It wasn't an idea for that day, and for whatever reason, I decided I didn't want to be like you know, an amateur and have a piece of paper in my hand. What I probably saw was like 80 to 90% had the CDs. Not the CDs, this is 1982, had the records, and not that many people had notepads or anything, because why would I want to do then what I'm trying to get to? And that is that I kind of scratch my head and go, what can I do? Could I get him to sign something else than just a notepad or something? So I'm looking at the, you know, albums are the question. Well, 45s, they sell 45s here. Now I don't know that much about 45s, but for some reason, like you look at displays of 45s in Toronto and New York, and it's all picture sleeves, and there were some picture sleeves in Winnipeg, but we mostly just got regular sleeves for 45. So I don't know how that ever worked at all, but whatever. But as I'm just not really thinking of anything in particular, and I'm looking at 45s, and I look at Bryan Adams, there's a picture single, a picture sleeve for a Bryan Adams song. I don't know if it was his latest single, but it's from his second album, You Want It, You Got It. So I thought, yeah, I can do this. I can buy this picture single. So I did that, and I got him to sign it. And there it is, Bryan Adams, Lonely Nights, right here, to Beau, Cheers, and over here, underneath his face, is his signature, Bryan Adams. And there were only about 15 people in line, too. So that's what my eyes must have noticed, is that most of those 15 people in line must have had his album, and not very many people had a notebook or notepad for him to sign. So that's what made me get this. But that's not even my story. My story is that, okay, you can probably add two and two together by everything I've said, because Bryan Adams has now appeared at MTS Centre a couple of times since MTS Centre opened. And so where that A&A Records was in Eaton Place, just north of Graham, that would be just mere steps away from where the stage is now in MTS Centre that Bryan Adams has now performed on twice. Bryan Adams makes his triumphant return to the spot that he held his autograph session on at A&A Records in 1982 when he opened for Loverboy at Winnipeg Arena. And I have tweeted him that on Twitter. I've tweeted people at eTalk that, and I don't know if there's been no reaction, but hey, the only reaction I would really want is just for someone to read that, go, snicker at that, and really, and I wonder if Bryan Adams even remembers that. So if just something for his own mind, if he wanted to respond to me, that'd be great. But I mean, that's the reason why people make comments online. I would hope anyways to get a personal reaction, even if they don't type anything, a response to you. And if they do type a response to you, that's great. If they favorite it or retweet it or something like that. I think I am just about done. And wow, has this thing gone about half an hour or what? But it's been a fun half hour. I hope it's been a fun half hour for you with all of these memories. So before we get out of here, let's do the rest. So I've got a pile here that I'll refer to as the rest, and no real big stories here other than maybe this first one. Okay, when I said before that in the 80s, the record stores kind of migrated, the few that still did exist, to eastward, but the block between Gary and Smith. There were two record stores in that block, the original buildings that have been dormant and vacant for all these years until finally they made the Avenue building that contained both of these stores. They spiffed it right up, and it's, wow, I'm really impressed at the Avenue building the way it looks like now. But the way the Avenue building had the original Musiplex, and nobody remembers this original Musiplex location. Everyone remembers when it was in the Burks building across the street, because they were there longer and they had listing posts and the whole thing. Bigger store, but not much ambiance to it. It was kind of antiseptic. I really enjoyed the ambiance of this original Musiplex, and I'm pretty sure this bag comes from the original Musiplex from the north side of Portage. And you can see the original Musiplex in action on one of my videos. Go to the Cinderella and Slaughter stuff at the 6-minute 54-second mark. That's where I am talking to all the fans at the Slaughter autograph session that was at the original Musiplex when Cinderella and Slaughter were having their autograph sessions on the same day, and Cinderella was at Music City. Oh yeah, Music City was on the south side, the very last Music City, where Book Fair is now, right by MTS Centre, or in those days right by Eaton's. But Cinderella was there, and just about 2 blocks away was Slaughter at the original Musiplex location, and that's where those girls are singing Up All Night, Sleep All Day. So check out that video on my YouTube videos if you haven't seen it, from Hard Rock Heroes. 654, that's where you'll see the original Musiplex with me talking to those fans. And of course, a couple of doors down from Musiplex was Records on Wheels. I've got a couple of different bags for Records on Wheels. I think this was the more common one with this color. Wheels has the deals. So when I think of Records on Wheels, I think of the era of like 1982 when Kiss was bigger in Britain than they were in North America, with Creatures of the Night, with the new wave of heavy metal, and the British fans got into Creatures of the Night somehow by Kiss, and because I to this day I still have a picture single of Creatures of the Night. I can't remember why I bought it, or what, there must have been something good on the other side or whatnot, but I just associate the two. Do you remember in the shopping malls there was Discus? Okay, and there's another bag for Discus. And then going back to Eaton Place, there were 2 record stores in Eaton Place, A&A Records, and then in the part that still exists today, south of Graham, as City Place, there was another one, and hey, that one kind of continues to this day, because it was Mr. Sound, which was the precursor to today's HMV. That is the only one that is still standing today in all the shopping malls, unless you consider Best Buy and Target and Walmart and Future Shop to be record stores. There was also, I got no real stories about it, Pepper Records. Well, sort of. Pepper Records was farther down. There's no address on here. Farther down on Portage Avenue. And if in later years, if in the dead of winter you still wanted to walk all the way to McDonald's at Langside, because there was no McDonald's downtown. There is now in City Place, but in the 70s there wasn't. So if you wanted to go to McDonald's, one finally opened up, but it was way over at Langside, so I had to walk all the way over there. So Pepper Records wasn't that much of a store, but it was a good place to stop in and get warmed up. At one point, they had a bunch of old 45s. I bought Discos in the Garbage by Brother Jake and the Incinerators there, so that's my main memory of Pepper Records. And then also in St. Vital Centre only was our one Music World outlet from that chain, and I hated it when that store closed because they had some great listening posts. The ones at Musiplex and the Burks building were breaking down like crazy, and Music World had some great listening posts, and I used to go there all the time just to listen to the CDs, and all that exists in listening post world now is they went down from 2 to 1 at London Drugs and maybe at HMV whenever they're working. There's like two CDs, and they might take the display down and put up a display of something else or whatnot. I think I am finished with this finally. So this is definitely the longest video I have ever done. I hope I don't have trouble uploading it. I hope you've enjoyed it. Almost certainly once I stop this, I will probably think in the coming days of, oh, I forgot that story. So that will be on the next webcam video. Maybe I'll even do it in the comments myself underneath, but hopefully I haven't forgotten anything, and I don't really have time to check the rundown that well before I get out of here. As I talk and do this at the same time, it kind of looks like I covered everything. So we shall see you on the other side. We'll smell you later. We'll TTYL, talk to you later, and let's look forward to whatever I'm going to do, probably with the sleaze that brings you to your knees again on my Webcam 4. And that's it from Beau Hajavitch on Webcam 3, the 1970s downtown Winnipeg record stores with the record bags on Winnipeg's only hard rock TV show, Hard Rock Heroes.